In our previous videos, we explored bodily sensations and the structure of the brain. Now let's dive into our feelings and emotions. But what is an emotion? Emotion is arousal, a mentally blind impulse that is experienced in consciousness as excitement or surge of energy. Pure emotion provides internal activation and motivation for action and involves no thinking, no thoughts whatsoever. Emotions cannot understand. Emotions can only be aroused and experienced. If you have problems realizing it, imagine what it means to fall in love at first sight. Some people don't believe in such a romantic occurrence, but still, falling in love with someone feels like your mind is totally occupied with that person, almost as if you were obsessed by the image of a person that you fancy. You just feel attracted to a person, and that gives you a pleasant feeling of sensation. You can't explain why, and even if you understand it, it doesn't matter to you because feeling is just so different than thinking. That brings me back to my point. Emotions are blind. They just occur as a reaction to various impressions, regardless of whether you understand them or not. Understanding is the ability of the mind, of your brain cortex, remember? But feeling is mostly in collaboration with your limbic system, a totally different part of the brain. Although emotions are mentally blind, usually they don't manifest themselves in their pure form. They always intermingle with some thoughts that we have about ourselves and the world. Our mentality, our mind, our thoughts exert an influence on emotions. Thoughts tint emotions, and the result we call commonly feelings. When emotions intermingle with thoughts, they become feelings. Feelings are intellectualized emotions, a mix in which the emotion preponderates. That's why feelings are not very rational. They can be rational, but for the most part they are vague and the rationality isn't really their thing. Whenever our emotions are involved, vagueness is their defining characteristics. Feelings emerged in animals. We all know that dogs and cats, other pets and wild animals can show various emotions of anger, fear and joy. Wild animals always aim for survival. In their struggle they express aggression and fear when they have to fight the way or to protect themselves from enemies. That's the origin of emotionality, and fear has played and still plays a major role in it. Human feelings are of course far more complex than the animal ones because, as mentioned, our emotions intermingle with thoughts, adding a bit of rationality to what otherwise would be a purely animalistic emotional arousal. At the basic level is the emotion that gives our feelings their characteristics, and the emotional aspect can be grouped into two groups. Emotions are either positive or negative. Feelings as emotional manifestations can be experienced as pleasant or unpleasant in varying degrees of intensity. Pleasant or enjoyable feelings are called positive, unpleasant or painful feelings are called negative. It's almost like describing electricity. When thoughts and feelings are weak and the mind is not in control, it's possible for people to lose themselves in emotional excesses. An emotion can run along the whole spectrum of positive and negative impulses, unrestrained. If the mind isn't strong enough, the emotion can overwhelm thoughts under certain circumstances, with the result of, for example, an angry person becoming furious, a sad person sinking in depression, or a joyous person indulging in bliss. You can observe it yourself when you have a quarrel within your family. Someone says something which hurts or offends you and you react forcefully and aggressively. You say things which you don't mean in a tone that you don't really like because some troubled part of your emotional soul just got uncovered while your mind wasn't vigilant enough to control the emotional impulse. You let loose, and only after the quarrel your mind comes back and lets you process what has just happened. That's usually the moments where you start feeling sorry and remorseful about how things unfolded, because your mood calmed down and the rationality kicked in. Oddly enough, some people's mood might even swing back to happy and light-hearted after the heavy experience of a quarrel. That's because emotions can alternate unrestrained between positive and negative poles, and will always do it if you don't control your emotional life with your mind. So, that's one part of the task as an adult human being. You need to control your emotions. But there is also another part. You will always feel something. So make sure that you only feel the noblest, the loftiest feelings. That's the main duty of emotional development. Purge your inner life from negative complexes so that you can express yourself freely and naturally. I know, it sounds easier than in practice. Still, this video is about theoretical groundwork, so let me babble, blah blah blah. Controlling your feelings on the one hand and living naturally and spontaneously on the other hand are not contradictions, though it is a balancing act that is difficult to master, admit it. But it's definitely worth it to try your best because you learn a lot as a person on the way there. What would be the other alternative? Well, you could neglect developing mental strength and noble feelings and continue striving mainly for pleasures and emotional passions. Party, comfort, money, status and sex would become the only motives considered worth striving for. You would become so self-absorbed that you would react angrily or aggressively towards other people when feeling hindered from pursuing your selfish goals. It's not a bright and joyous alternative. You'll find happiness in being a good person to people. That's the unspoken secret. So what's the benefit of working on your emotions? Well, it develops your mind as well. The mind develops under the influence of feelings occupied with more intellectual and abstract interests. The mind intellectualizes emotionality over time, and the increased mental capacity fosters the power of visualization. Imagination becomes the next driving factor for emotional mental development and creative work, and that's something we're going to explore in the next video. Stay tuned.
Once again.